So for the O-rings, give them a little shot of the spray lubricant, silicone spray lubricant, little shot, shoot both sides. And then fit them over the end of the transfer tube, both sides. They slip on real easy. And keep in mind, when you're using silicone spray, paint does not stick to silicone, so if you're using any painted surfaces, don't get the silicone spray near a surface that you're going to paint, or you have to really do a good job of cleaning that surface before paint will stick to it again. So be very careful getting silicone spray around anything you're going to refinish. As you can see, I'm just spraying it right here on this towel. Just put that both sides, and then continue doing that for all the other parts. So now all the O-rings are installed on their parts. We'll set those aside, and we're going to go ahead and do a rebuild on the fuel pressure regulator. We're going to take out all the screws. Got a couple of them that are already loose. So as we're taking the last screw out, you can feel the fuel pressure regulator spring pushing up on it. With the flange. You can see the flange right there, just on the outside. There's the fuel pressure regulator spring. The fuel pressure comes in through both sides from the fuel rail, and then this pressure valve actually pushes pressure up. When it gets too much pressure, it pushes the diaphragm upwards, and then it releases fuel. The over-pressured fuel goes down in through that hole, down out here, and then goes through the transfer. The return tube on the fuel rail goes right out back to the tank. So that's how the fuel pressure regulator works. Is every time that the pressure gets too high inside of the regulator, then it actually pops up, and vacuum coming from this also pulls, which helps control the fuel pressure, and the vacuum will pull this plunger off of that seat, and then the fuel pressure, excessive fuel pressure, goes out there, through there, and back to the tank. One thing also to keep in mind when you're working with a fuel system is when you're wiping things out, use paper to wipe this out, just like when you're building an engine. You want to use paper rather than a towel. You use something like this, a microfiber. Those little microfibers, if anything gets locked inside the fuel system or inside of an engine during a rebuild, those fibers from the towel will not break down from, those fibers from microfiber towel won't break down in the oil or the fuel, but little microscopic pieces of the paper will break down. So that's why I always use paper when you're working in an engine rebuild or a system like this. So you don't want to use anything that has like a polyester or a cotton. You want to use paper. There's the fuel pressure regulator block. It's all cleaned out, cleaned the surface, blew this off too. This is the diaphragm. So this pivoting surface right here on the new one sits against that seat on the bottom of the fuel pressure regulator block. So this goes on, line it up, and make sure that you put the fuel pressure regulator cap back on it so that the vacuum port is going out that direction towards the fuel rail. So it goes that direction. So you're going to feel that it doesn't push right down. So there's a little bit of a gap because of that spring. So what you're going to have to do is push this down and start your screws, and start 2 of them before you let the pressure back off. At least start one on one side and the opposite side, because you don't want to do 2, one there and then there, because it starts to tweak the spring on the inside. So you want to give equal pressure down and start 2 on either side of the pressure regulator. So get 2 in there started before you take the pressure off and start the other 4. So we got 2 of them started by holding the pressure regulator down and starting both sides. It adds pressure to there, do the other side, and hold the other side and keep pressure on it. It takes some force, but get 2 of them started, and then you can still see it's not seated all the way. So get those 2 started and then put the other 4 in, and then when you get ready to tighten them down, you do the crisscross pattern, the star pattern, just like you would put a wheel on your car. Don't do them in a circular motion or a circular fashion. Just to do this correctly, we're going to retorque the fuel pressure regulator bolts with this WEHA inch-pound torque wrench. You can see it says 15 inch-pounds. So we're going to go ahead and retorque the bolts. I've loosened up all 6 of the bolts, and we will retorque all of these. Do the cross pattern, just like you were bolting and torquing the wheel on your car. Do not do them around in a circle. Do them cross pattern. And then I'm going to go back and do the double torque, which just confirms that one didn't loosen up a little bit while you were doing the other one. So now all the fuel pressure regulator bolts are the correct torque. Now let's get some other work done. Now that we're all torqued to my specification, you can hear that little pressure valve in there. So this one's even making noise, but it makes me feel better that I've had so many other problems on this system that makes me feel better that I've replaced this fuel pressure regulator diaphragm, because anything can happen. So now we're all set. So now we can start assembling the fuel rail assembly.